Have you ever been watching a TV show of a game and thought, damn, this casting choice is absolutely bollocks, and then gone, wait a minute, I have a good idea of who could play this person instead? Which is none other than Raider, the new character in Nightreign. All seriousness though, I genuinely think Raider probably would have been a better choice than Bella Ramsey for Ellie, I'm just saying. Out of every single character inside of Nightreign, Raider is definitely the one I'm most excited for. This is for a multitude of reasons. From omen dragons, to omens, to seafarers we never knew, and not to mention a certain symbol that crops up and looks very similar to a certain being, a certain daughter of the cosmos. Without any further ado, darling, please sit back, relax, grab some succulent, juicy, tender and sensational prawns if you want, and enjoy. Raider is a seafarer. Now this is a very interesting topic because we are not told much about the seas of Elden Ring Nightreign, or Shadow of the Erdtree's waters. We are given subtle hints like the little drawings on the map, not to mention we see ships on the map, not to mention we get to the lands between by some means. So there are ways of transport via water, but information about it is very limited. Raider is a monumental point in the lore because we don't know any other seafarers inside of Elden Ring. Seafarer is basically a guy that lives at sea. Simple enough, right? But there is so much more. Starting off, his helmet. What the fuck, dude? I wouldn't blame you at first glance thinking this is just some horned helmet. No, it really isn't. This guy's quite literally wearing the head of a baby horned omen dragon. How do I know this is an omen dragon? Well, if you look at the horns, either this is a deformity, which is a genuine possibility, or the most likely answer is that they are like Baal. Baal is an omen dragon. He shares a lot of similarities to those which possess the Crucible. For example, he has curved horns, the sort of satyr-like elements that we see with the Omen. If we then look at the ancient dragons of his era, they are vastly different. For example, pure white, and they have straight horns. Baal's descendants, the Drakes, share some of these similarities. For example, their horns are curved, but not majorly. It is the exact opposite with the creature on top of Raider's head. It has horns that twirl and spiral to a very same extent as the ones found in the Shadow Keep. Baal is a manifestation of the Crucible, and I believe this creature is also a manifestation of the Crucible, just more in line with the Hornsence era, which, as we're about to talk about, makes a lot of sense. The Crucible comes in many forms. You've got Misbegotten, you've got the Omen, you've got the Hornsent, you've got all the creatures in the Lands of Shadow which are all horny. Each one of these factions are freaky, yes, but they all have their similarities, yet each of them are different in their own ways. And I believe that's a manifestation of the Crucible. The Crucible is a primordial cooking pot of life. When the Crucible manifests and it comes about in certain ways, surely it would only make sense that as time passes on, the reason this actually occurs is because the world is changing. And I believe using this we can sort of pinpoint some locations and time periods where this character is from. How this dragon's horns grow is very similar to how the Hornsent and the creatures related to the Hornsent's horns grow inside the Lands of Shadow. In my opinion, making it very clear that this dragon is from the age of the Hornsent. The interesting part is we don't see any Crucible dragons inside the Lands of Shadow. But ding ding ding, he's a seafarer. This opens up a new layer to the lore of the seas of Elden Ring. There are creatures hiding within their depths, and I believe what Raider is wearing is one of them. The people Raider belongs to are completely unknown to us, but there are a few details which we can sort of use to try and infer some details. The first of those hints comes in the weapon. Now you'll notice in a lot of the trailer, Raider actually uses the Golem's halberd. Now the Golem's halberd belongs to those big stone guys you see basically everywhere in the Lands Between. Now these golems are actually from a civilization long since past. This kind of links in with Raider since we know nothing about his people. Something that adds on to this further is when you consider that Raider is completely normal. He has no signs of the Crucible upon him. If we're going off what we talked about earlier and about the time period he's from, that makes no sense as basically everyone inside the Lands of Shadow inside the time of the Haunsant, barring the shaman who were their own thing from another world. Everyone had these traces of the Crucible, and yet Raider doesn't, which brings up a lot of questions for me. Now, you could go down the route, of course, that he is a shaman, but I think the more interesting answer would be he's from the same civilization as the golems. This could also explain why his people are seafarers. If they were there, the original civilization in the lands which would later become the lands of Shadow, the Haunsant come along, kick them out. Where are they going to go? Where better place than the sea? But who exactly were they? Well, we can actually infer. For who was in the lands of Shadow before the Haunsant? Well, it was the people of the Rao Ruins. Coincidentally, you'll also find golems in the Rao Ruins. The same things that hold the weapon, the very same weapon that Raider uses. Inside of Rao Ruins, you'll actually notice these monuments which are of vital importance to the people of Rao Ruins. In some of them, you can even find crucible talismans. The funny thing? The actual monuments don't have any crucible marks themselves. It's almost like they were worshipping something they themselves could not attain. This culture can be seen with Raider, who is in fact wearing, as we talked about earlier, a Haunsant dragon's head. That's freaky, but it's also the same sort of culture that existed inside of Rao Ruins. This would also explain why Rao Ruins is so desolate and devoid of life. I've always thought it a bit strange, but now it kind of makes sense why there's no one there. For if the Haunsant literally just kicked all of Raider's people to the seas, and the ones that didn't go probably got killed. Perhaps it's a coincidence, but the sort of shadow figures we see inside of Rao Ruins have no horns. They are completely normal. Perhaps this is a subtle way of telling us the fate that befell the citizens of Rao Ruins. Now, I haven't made the thumbnail yet, but I'm dead convinced I probably used some kind of Metyr picture. And that wasn't just clickbait, there is a Metyr connection, which honestly blew my mind. There are actually 3 connections to Metyr inside of both the 2 Raider trailers. Starting with the biggest, if you actually look at the art for the Totem Stellar art, you'll notice this motherfucker just has Metyr plastered on it for no apparent reason. And oh golly gosh, it does not stop there. For on Raider himself, he's got a Metyr-shaped thing on his chest. And thirdly, if you actually look on the stone pillar that rises out of the ground upon the Totem Stellar art, you'll notice what looks like the shape of Metyr. Albeit, I do agree, it's very hard to tell, mainly because FromSoftware has decided to do absolutely terrible angles for this part, so you can't see what's inscribed upon this pillar, which, in my little conspiracy theory mind, I definitely think was on purpose. But the little shaping we can see is very similar to what we see on his chest and what we see on the actual icon for the art. If this is referring to Metyr, it actually makes a lot of sense, for we've talked about this previously in the video. We can sort of place him inside the era of the Haunsant. Metyr is very active in the age of the Haunsant. I also doubt that Marika was the first choice, the first candidate to sort of wield the power of the outer gods, to wield the power of the greater will, or at least what they think is the greater will. It's really annoying that we don't know the circumstances, but I propose that there was once a civilization, aka Rao Ruins, that worshipped Metyr and wielded her power. Now what their actual worship of her was, we don't know, for it's most likely when the Haunsant came along, they stripped Rao Ruins of everything to do with Metyr. For if the knowledge of Metyr and the knowledge of these outer gods became common knowledge amongst the people of the lands of Shadow, then surely the sort of support they have in the divinity of the Haunsant would surely be diminished. For it shows there are other powers out there beside the power of the primordial crucible. I cannot end this video without talking about Totem Stellar even more. When Totem Stellar comes up and the gravestone appears, I've heard people talk about earthbending, right? I don't think that is the case. What I believe this is it's the exact same when you summon someone into your world. This is a gravestone. How do I know this? Well, Stellar is another word for gravestone. Plus, it literally says tombstone inside of the description. This is not some piece of rock you're summoning out the ground. No, you're summoning a corpse. And considering Metyr's face is literally on the art, I believe you're summoning Metyr. Or at least a body part of her that has been enshrined and entombed. But Gecko, that makes no sense, we literally fight Metyr. Well, you've got to imagine, Metyr is the daughter of the greater will, and a being that exists, from what we understand, beyond human comprehension, and definitely beyond just the physical plane. Hell, how we reach Metyr is we blow on a massive finger, where we are then transported to a very similar realm that we fight the Elden Beast in. For all we know, this could be a separate realm for the outer gods, where the physical body and the spiritual body are split. This could be completely in a different plane. At the point of Shadow of the Erdtree, at the point of Nightreign, Metyr's body might have been dead for a really long time, and I genuinely believe that is what we summon. Considering the size of the gravestone, I definitely don't think that it's some sort of full body of Metyr, but what I do think it is say probably like a finger or an arm or something that has been entombed, and that part of the body is what you summon, instead of like the whole tomb where it's all together. Kind of like how in Catholic religion where they take body parts of saints and then they're kept. I believe maybe that's what they're doing here, but instead inside of this Metyr civilization, maybe that sort of relic process is then entombed to protect it. Do you need further proof? Well, look no further than that we actually fight Metyr in this other realm on top of water. Now, what is Raider? He's a motherfucking seafarer. This dude lives and breathes the water, and so does the Metyr boss arena. Is it a coincidence? Maybe, but I definitely thought it was definitely worth saying. Sadly everyone, that is the end of the video. If you did enjoy, please consider leaving a like and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel, while at the same time letting me know you enjoy this style of content. Anyway, I'm not going to dilly-daddly anymore. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, don't you dare go hollow friends, and may you find your worth in the waking world. See you in the next one, and goodbye.